Hey all. So I haven't done one of these spotlight with context videos yet for a rework, and part of that is because the first few, including Ant-Man and Juggernaut, were just already fully playtested and done by the time I started work at the company, whereas I actually had quite a bit of time to playtest Rocket and was there for most of his development, and so hopefully I can offer some clarity here. He is still recognizably a very similar champion, but there are some important differences, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy him. So, first off, let's just address the elephant in the room. As part of this rework, his prestige is massively better. Like, basically tied with Nimrod better. So, he's not going to be competitive to Sig Up if you are aiming for top 5 AQ, but if you're aiming for top 5 AQ, you're probably also not taking prestige advice from me. And so for anyone else, I would just say if you need a decent but not groundbreaking prestige champ to sig up and you like Rocket, he's really not a bad option now. So, kind of interesting. I don't know whether we'll be doing that with future reworks, but we did this time, so enjoy. So, moving right on, let's just touch on the strengths and weaknesses. I tend to skip over the core mechanics on these just because we talk about them later. First off, it's pretty easy once he gets rolling to basically have 100% uptime on a pretty powerful armor break. The one off the special 2 is seriously strong, and so this just lets him land a lot of very reliable, powerful crits. His shield system is way better now. It does use up a resource. It's not an automated, unlimited thing, but it is going to let you survive particularly dangerous hits in specific spots as long as you don't get hit too often. It's an excellent safety net. And then, like it says here, he has a very strong heal block and power control, kind of like Warlock. Both of them have that just permanent heal block, and then they punish healing, including the willpower mastery, with power drain. So I do want to speak to, I just noticed reading through this, there is a typo here. He does not power burn the opponent when they try to heal, he power drains them. He has plenty of damage in his kit, but this is not a source of it, and also power drain and power burn trigger different immunities, so just want to call that out. It is not power burn. I actually scrolled down and double checked the SIG to confirm my memory of that. I'm sure that'll get fixed before too long. Anyway, so weaknesses. Unlike Warlock, he does need to stick his armor breaks. They are even more important to his kit because they're not just damage, they're also part of the utility. And so against somebody like Kingpin, he's going to struggle. The flip side of this is that, also unlike Warlock, he does not get weaker when the opponent has multiple unique buffs, so there are some trade-offs there, but you do need the armor break to land. And additionally, while he is more sustainable than he once was, he is still definitely a glass cannon, and if you mess up a lot and or early, you're going to feel it. So, let's talk about scrap metal because this is kind of the core of his whole kit. You want to build this up to 50, and almost everything else you do, other than land critical hits, is fueled by scrap metal. And of course, landing critical hits fuels the scrap metal. So it works out nicely. You get extra critical rating for every hit in your combo meter. This used to be Rocket Sig, it's now in his base kit. So you get him out of the box and he lands a ton of critical hits. And then he gets 2 scrap metal per critical hit, and he gets 3 against metal opponents. It's a fairly small increase on paper, but that 50% extra scrap metal is extremely noticeable. He's very good against metal opponents. And then when you get rid of an armor up buff, like against somebody like even Colossus, because this is a tech champion and so he can actually armor break Colossus, then you get extra scrap. So that part is really nice. Now I do want to point out that his armor breaks all consume scrap to apply. So don't think about this as cool, I armor break to get 10 scrap. It's more that your armor breaks cost less scrap because, like it says here, Rocket is salvaging the broken armor to contribute to the rest of his ramp up. So, the shield system, it's the same activation. You dash back and hold block, but now it's not rotating through the 3 that he used to have. It is a single shield system with a single set of benefits, and in my opinion, a significantly better set of benefits, and it does cost 25 scrap metal. And so you will not be able to do this out of the gate. You are going to have to land enough crits to actually get to 25 scrap metal and back up and hold block. Now, against metal opponents, you can do this very quickly. Against non-metal opponents, there is some crit luck, but he starts landing pretty consistent crits fairly quickly. So this isn't like a huge ask, but you may be close to around the special 2 area when you get enough to do this. So you will feel the lack of it early on. Now, note that it is a dormant shield system when you do this, which means that this armor rating, this physical resistance, this special attack resistance, none of those effects are active while the shield is dormant. You have to get hit to turn these on. And so when they turn on, you will be much tankier. But until then, you're not benefiting from that armor or that physical resistance. Your blocks are not getting that benefit. That's a really important thing I want to call out, because this is kind of like how Luke Cage can go indestructible, but he can also very easily die to chip damage on the block because the indestructible doesn't help him there. So keep that in mind. The shield system will also trigger if you're about to get hit by an unblockable attack from a mutant. So let's say Storm Pyramid X's unblockable special 2, it will trigger and you will get these benefits. So that, it really is incredibly handy. It will just kick in and save your butt. So, moving on to the heavy attack, if you just need an armor break debuff, this is how you keep the uptime on it. It does require scrap, but it only requires 10 scrap, and so once the fight gets going, if you need maximum uptime on armor breaks, you can pretty much do like 5-hit combo heavy, 5-hit combo heavy over and over again. These last 15 seconds, you can keep them up. They're not going to be giving you a ton of damage, but they make sure the armor break is there. We'll get to why that's important with the SIG ability. It is called out there a little bit in the dev notes. This is also your easiest armor break if you just need an armor break, like against somebody like Killmonger, or maybe Mysterio. So the special 1, this has been changed significantly. It's no longer just a cruelty. Now you get this rupture debuff on each hit. So that just happens regardless. You get this physical damage. This is really nice because this is another tech champion who can actually take Bishop. He's not doing energy damage. He's not doing bleed. And he gets this power drain. He can be a very solid Bishop counter. Because remember, his basics are physical as well, which means he's just not going to give Bishop prowess. You do have to deal with the fact that eventually Bishop is going to throw specials, and even without prowess, you are relatively fragile. But it's one more Bishop counter, and it's very nice. Anyway, ruptures do physical damage, so you do have a way to get around damage caps without relying on energy damage. And you know, he doesn't only have his crits to fall back on. And then if you have scrap, you get these power drains based on the opponent's current power. So the closer they are to special 3, the stronger this is. It is 3 hits, and so if you have 45 scrap metal and you launch this while the opponent is at 3 bars, you get rid of 45% of their power. You take them all the way back under 2 bars. That requires you to have 45, but this is pretty strong if you're willing to use it and burn the scrap. And then the special 2, this is going to be your bread and butter for most fights where all you really care about is the damage. It's a very long armor break and it is quite powerful. it consumes all of your scrap, but it scales with that scrap, including all the way up to 50. And then after that, by the time you get to the special 2, you have a high enough combo that you have almost guaranteed crits. And so every single hit is going to be a critical hit that's multiplied by this giant armor break. This is where the damage comes from. If you're fast enough and or you're fighting a metal opponent, you can sometimes stack 2 of these for a little bit. I also had a lot of fun using him with the War Machine pre-fights to extend this armor break. It is a significant investment of that second character, but it really spikes Rocket's damage output. And like you said, you also get extra attack rating on the final hit. To me, that's not quite as important as the fact that you now have that big armor break and you follow it up with all those basics, but it can make for a nice yellow number. So the special 3, you're noticing a theme here. All of his specials consume scrap. So you are going to need to stay aggressive and maintain this resource, and you are going to feel better against metal champions because anytime you throw a special 3, you're probably dipping into your resource. So the special 3 uses up all of his scrap to destroy the opponent's power bar. Like it says, you get this 12-second power drain debuff that special locks them. So you can throw this, and not only will they not be able to respond with a special 3, but they also may not even be able to respond with a special 2 anytime soon, as they are slowly getting drained because you're also special locking them. This is something that will occasionally happen with Warlock, where it's like, okay, you go for your special 3 because it's the big power drain, right? But then it starts power draining the opponent, they immediately throw a special 2 in retaliation, and maybe you still lose the fight right there. Rocket does have that extra layer of the special lock, so that you have a bit more time to really capitalize on the power control you're getting. And then, because it is still Rocket Special 3, you get a similar bleed debuff to what you used to. It's not that strong, but it's a fair amount of damage. It's a long bleed debuff. If you care about having a bleed debuff on the opponent for something like bleed vulnerability, this helps you out. I mentioned earlier I like using Rocket against Bishop. Don't do this if you're fighting Bishop, but I think that kind of goes without saying. Like it says in the dev notes here, following up a special 3 with a special 1 can be very strong, because it gives you time to build back up to usually at least 15 scrap, so that you already have a big power drain, up to 2 bars, then you can follow it up with a special 1, drain even more, maybe even take them below a bar if you gain enough scrap, maybe against a metal opponent. He has really solid power control. And then the Sig ability, this is the key to it. This is why he was teased as living in the same basic space as Warlock, because he has a passive heal block while the opponent is armor broken. So again, it requires the armor break to stick. It is not a passive heal block in and of itself, but it is also a true heal block, which triggers certain things that Warlock's infection does not trigger. It stops the unblockable buildup on Path 1 in Tier 2 in Alliance War. It benefits from the upcoming Vision Relic for heal blocks. It's a really nice ability. And then, of course, if they are trying to regen, then you get this power drain, and it is for each armor break on them. So if you can stack a couple different armor breaks, if you can throw a special 2 and follow it up with a heavy to keep armor breaks, if, God forbid, you have some quest node that allows you to apply even more armor breaks for some reason, this is a lot of fun. I know that the wording is a little bit different from Warlock's, but the functionality is almost exactly the same. The primary difference, like I said, is that this is coded as a true heal block. It is not just an effect that stops healing. Additionally, and this does scale, this is not just a flat amount of crit resistance. That's another small thing that we'll try and get clarified soon. The shield system gives him up to 2,000 crit resistance. This is pretty darn chunky. And up to almost 2,000 block proficiency. And note that the block proficiency is while the shield is dormant. This is huge because this is the only part of the shield that you benefit from without getting hit. So without having to face block, if you have a high sig rocket, you can just chill with an actually competitive amount of block proficiency as soon as you get to 25 scrap, and that just makes the rest of the fight that much easier. Like I said, you do have to get to 25 scrap, so it's not that he can't take damage. He does live in that similar space to Warlock, like I said, but he is flimsier than Warlock. I think the trade-off is that his power control is actually better, and his damage is better, and he really does feel like a good tech glass cannon. It's a really fun kit to play. The animations are the same, but I think the new abilities fit the animations really well. He's just fun and effective. I've also personally been using him in internal playtests for story content, for some of the war champions, for other characters. He's just quite good. You do have to stay on your toes because you don't want to lose your combo, and you need to minimize how much health you lose on the way to building the shield. But outside of that, he's very, very strong. Talking about these new synergies, he has one with Winter Soldier. He can get an armor up buff. 400 is not a big deal. So this doesn't really matter for making Rocket a whole lot tankier, but it is an active armor up buff for 10 seconds, which is usually long enough for you to build another 15 scrap and throw another heavy attack, and therefore Rocket becomes a havoc counter. So that part's neat. Or if there's something else you need an armor up buff for, there you go. Winter Soldier, on the other side, gets a precision buff. It's an okay precision buff, but personally I think Winter Soldier crits a decent amount already. The problem is that when he crits, you can't always rely on his power drain from his signature ability, as strong as the power drain is. So while this precision is active, his abilities being more likely to trigger, that power drain being significantly more likely to trigger, makes Winter Soldier a better power control option. He's not something that I would go to in a fight where I absolutely need to worry about controlling the opponent's power, but it does make him easier to use. You can be more aggressive with him. You just have to worry about fewer specials. If you pair this with the Killmonger synergy for Winter Soldier, so that he also has that Star-Lord style damage buildup, he feels really, really good. And then for Misty Knight, basically it just means that she's going to ramp faster and everything about her is going to come online and that much more easily and be that much easier to maintain. So really solid. With Yondu, Rocket can go up to 60 scrap instead. This means that he can throw a heavy and a special one from max without needing to land more crits. You get that 15 plus the 45. This means that the armor break on his special 2 can be stronger because you now have more scrap to fuel the armor break. This is just very, very good. It is only a 20% increase, but that is a 20% increase to the resource that fuels literally everything Rocket does. And then on Yondu's side, I have been a big proponent of Yondu's buff for a while now. I've used him in a lot of internal playtests too. It's a horribly underrated buff. But the core of that buff when you want damage is after a number of special attacks have been thrown, you throw a special 2, you get those big furies. Because you throw a special 2, sometimes you then have to bait out a special, and by the time you get to wail on the opponent, you may have lost some of the fury. The fury lasting half again as long really helps Yondu be a better damage option on top of his utility. And then I've skipped over a lot of the generic synergies because I just want to talk about the Hit Monkey synergy. And originally, this allowed Rocket to also land armor breaks on critical hits the same way that Hit Monkey does. I don't think I need to explain why that got changed, given that now Rocket has heal block and power drain. When he lands an armor break on an opponent with willpower, that would be just a wee bit busted. It would kind of be like if Warlock landed a 6-second infection on every critical hit and had almost guaranteed critical hits. So instead, you just get one additional scrap metal on every crit, which I already talked about how important it is to fight a metal champion with Rocket. This basically turns everyone else into a metal champion and makes metal champions feel even better. I talked about this already with Yondu, but this just gives you more fuel for literally all of your abilities. Very, very good. I believe the Squirrel Girl and Beast side is the same. And then that's Rocket. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know there's been a lot of speculation about this one. A lot of people were really hoping it would be good. I think he is. He has limitations. Like I said, he's still a glass cannon. You do have to stick a debuff for his core piece of utility, but I think that that utility is very powerful, and I think his damage is really solid. And even if you can't stick that armor break, he still has access to power drain. He still has almost guaranteed crits. It's a really solid character here, and with some important safety nets as well. I think he's a valuable addition to the tech class, and I look forward to seeing people play with him more once the update goes live next week. So, thank you so much, everybody, for watching this one, and I will catch y'all soon with some more champions that have basically been officially announced in Screen Rant at this point, so I don't have to play coy about it. When I am allowed to walk through Atuma and Shuri's abilities with you, I will, and look forward to that. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and take care.